The lower levels of Helios Station were not designed for living, which was exactly why people lived there. The official maps called the area Auxiliary Maintenance Ring C, but everyone else called it the Drift, because gravity flickered just enough to make you feel like the station was slowly exhaling you into space. Lights buzzed overhead with the confidence of devices that had given up on being repaired, and the air smelled faintly of metal, recycled water, and bad decisions made 3 decades ago. Marcus Stone pushed his tool cart down the corridor, arguing out loud with a diagnostic drone that insisted, incorrectly, that the thermal regulator had not exploded last week. "I don't care what your sensors say," Marcus muttered. "I was there. It exploded emotionally." The drone beeped in what it claimed was disagreement. Marcus ignored it. He always did. Talking to machines was easier than talking to people, mostly because machines didn't look at him like he was wasting oxygen. The drift was quiet today, unusually so, and that made him uneasy. Quiet in the lower levels usually meant either a power failure or something had crawled out of a vent that absolutely shouldn't have. That was when he saw her. She was sitting near a cracked heat vent, hands folded loosely in her lap, as if she had simply paused in the middle of an invisible journey. Her clothes were mismatched layers of scavenged fabric, cleaned carefully but worn thin, and her hair fell in dark, tangled strands over her shoulders. At first glance, she looked human, which was why most people probably kept walking. Helios Station was full of humans having bad weeks. Then Marcus noticed her ears. They were long, tapering elegantly past her hairline, unmistakably alien, and completely unhidden. Not decorative, not augmented, real. She made no effort to conceal them, which struck Marcus as either incredibly brave or deeply tired. Her face was calm in a way that didn't belong down here, free of the sharp, desperate edge common to those who slept where gravity failed. She wasn't begging. She wasn't even watching people pass. She simply existed. Marcus stopped walking. The drone bumped into his leg and emitted an offended chirp. "Don't start," he whispered to it. He stood there longer than was reasonable, running through several internal arguments about minding his own business, station policy, and the fact that he was definitely not equipped to deal with mysterious alien women today, or any day. But then his stomach growled, reminding him that he had a protein bar in his pocket and a conscience that was inconveniently functional. He cleared his throat. "So," he said, aiming for casual and landing somewhere near awkward, "either you're the calmest person on this station, or you know something I don't." She looked up slowly. Her eyes were sharp, observant, and far too alert for someone living in the drift. When she spoke, her voice was soft, measured, and oddly precise. "I know many things," she said, "but none that would help you." Marcus blinked. Wow. Usually people at least pretend they might help. A faint smile touched her lips, quick and almost surprised, as if humor was something she hadn't unpacked in a while. He took that as a win. He pulled the protein bar from his pocket and held it out. "Look, I'm not great at introductions," he said. "I'm Marcus. I fix things that shouldn't still be working." "That's food. It tastes like compressed regret, but it's technically edible." She studied the bar as if it might explode. Then she accepted it with a small nod. "Thank you. My name is Eris." "That's, actually a nice name," Marcus said. "Very melodic. Mine sounds like it belongs to a guy who loses arguments with vending machines." She glanced at the nearby dispenser, its screen flickering between error codes. "It appears you are winning," she said. Marcus laughed before he could stop himself. It echoed oddly in the corridor, startling a pair of maintenance bots. "You might be my favorite person today, Eris." She unwrapped the bar carefully and took a small bite, chewing slowly, as if measuring the experience. "It is disappointing," she said diplomatically. "High praise," Marcus replied. 5 stars on the station review board." He should have walked away then. He had work orders waiting, a supervisor who enjoyed reminding him he was replaceable, and a life built carefully around not getting involved. Instead, he found himself leaning against the wall, talking about broken gravity nodes, about how the drift had better views of the stars than the luxury decks, about how people up there paid a fortune to feel small while people down here learned it for free. Eris listened. She always listened, When he joked, she smiled. When he complained, she nodded, as if she understood systems failing under the weight of expectations. She didn't ask for anything. That unsettled him more than if she had. When he finally stood to leave, hours later than planned, he hesitated. "I'm usually around here," he said, gesturing vaguely. "If you need food or sarcasm, I have a surplus of sarcasm." "I will remember," she said. Marcus walked away, telling himself it was nothing. Just another strange moment in a station full of them. He didn't notice as he turned the corner, the way Eris watched him go. Not with gratitude, not with hope, but with something quieter and heavier, like relief mixed with an old, careful sadness. Above them, far beyond the drift, royal beacons pulsed silently through the void, searching. Marcus told himself he was not coming back to the drift for her. This was a lie he repeated with impressive discipline for exactly 2 days. On the third day, he arrived with a fresh diagnostic kit, a bruised knuckle from arguing with a stubborn access panel, and 2 protein bars, one beef-flavored, one algae-based, because he was nothing if not inclusive in his poor decisions. The drift greeted him with its usual half-gravity wobble, gently lifting his cartwheels off the floor just enough to make steering feel like negotiating with a drunk shopping trolley. She was there again. Eris sat near the same heat vent, though she had adjusted its output slightly, rerouting excess warmth into a fractured conduit that Marcus was fairly certain had not worked in years. The air around her felt marginally more stable, warmer in a precise, intentional way. Marcus stopped, stared, and then checked his wrist scanner. "That's not supposed to do that," he said. Eris looked up. "It was inefficient," she replied. "It was broken." "Those are not the same thing." Marcus exhaled slowly. "I am going to pretend I did not see that, because if I acknowledge it, I might have to admit you're better at my job than I am." She smiled, a little more openly this time. "I would not want to threaten your livelihood." "Appreciated," he said, handing her the bars. "I brought options. I don't know your dietary requirements, but I assume you prefer food over starvation." She considered both bars with the seriousness of a royal decree before choosing the algae one. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Bold choice. That one tastes like regret with hints of pond." She took a bite and nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, pond regret." They sat together while the station hummed and shifted around them. Marcus worked on a junction panel nearby, more out of habit than necessity, occasionally muttering insults at the circuitry. Eris watched with interest, her gaze following the patterns of light as if she could see beyond the casing. "You speak to machines as if they understand," she said. "They do," Marcus replied. "They just don't care." "That is very human." "Hey," he said, mock offended. "Some of us are sensitive." She tilted her head slightly, studying him in a way that made him feel as if he were the one being repaired. "Why do you come here?" she asked. He shrugged. "Someone has to keep the drift from falling into the reactor shaft. Also, it's quiet. People don't expect much from you down here." "Is that good?" "Depends on the day." He finished recalibrating the panel and leaned back, stretching. "You could probably get a berth up deck if you wanted," he said casually. "Long ears or not, station law says nobody sleeps in the maintenance rings." "I do not want to go up," Eris said a little too quickly. Marcus caught it but didn't press. He had learned over years of fixing broken things that forcing a problem rarely made it cooperate. "Fair enough," he said. "The drift has character, and rats the size of backpacks." "They are very territorial," she said. "You've met them. They tried to steal my blanket." "And lived," she smiled again. "Barely." By the end of the shift, Marcus realized he had spent more time talking than working, which was going to earn him a lecture and possibly a pay cut. As he packed up his tools, he hesitated, then cleared his throat. "Look," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "I have a spare room." Eris blinked. "Before you say no," he rushed on, "it's not glamorous. The bed creaks, the lighting flickers, and my neighbor practices a wind instrument that should be illegal in most systems. But it's warm, and private, and the gravity mostly behaves." She studied him for a long moment. Marcus resisted the urge to fill the silence with another joke. Her eyes were calculating now. weighing risk against something else, something heavier. Why? She asked. Marcus shrugged again, his favorite defense mechanism. Because if I walk away knowing you're sleeping next to a heat vent that might explode, I won't sleep, and I already have trouble sleeping. That sounds inefficient, she said gently. Story of my life. Eris looked down at her hands. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. If I accept, there will be rules. Absolutely, Marcus said. I already have rules. No touching my tools, no rewiring the coffee maker, and no mysterious midnight rituals. I require privacy, she said, and you must not ask questions I do not wish to answer. He held up his hands. I am a professional at not asking questions. It's how I've survived this long. After a pause that stretched just long enough to make him wonder if he'd misjudged everything, she nodded. Very well. His quarters were exactly as advertised. Small, cluttered, and decorated with a collection of obsolete star charts he kept meaning to throw away. Eris stepped inside and looked around as if cataloging every detail. It is sufficient, she said. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about my home. Days turned into weeks. Eris proved to be a quiet presence, rising early, speaking little, and moving through the station with careful awareness. She never touched Marcus's things without permission, though he caught her once staring at an old holomap of the outer systems with an expression that was far too intimate for a tourist. She laughed at his jokes, even the bad ones, especially the bad ones. Marcus noticed things, the way she corrected his posture without thinking, the way she flinched when a news broadcast mentioned royal convoys, the way station techs seemed to behave better when she was nearby, as if it recognized authority it wasn't programmed to obey. He didn't say anything. Somewhere far beyond Helios Station, ships were changing course. Signals were being traced. Names long buried were spoken again in careful, hopeful tones. In the drift, Marcus Stone shared his dinner with a quiet alien woman who slept in his spare room, and neither of them said the words that were already beginning to shape the future. Marcus learned 3 important things during the 3rd week of living with Eris. First, she did not sleep much. Second, when she did sleep, she dreamed quietly but intensely, as if her mind refused to fully rest. Third, she absolutely, unquestionably, could not be trusted around ancient technology. He discovered the 3rd point when he woke one morning to the sound of his wall panel humming in a tone it had never used before. Not the angry buzz of malfunction or the hollow click of power failure, but a smooth, almost respectful resonance. Marcus opened one eye, stared at the ceiling, and considered pretending he was still asleep. Then the hum shifted pitch, and the lights brightened to a perfectly balanced spectrum that didn't flicker once. That alone was alarming. He rolled out of bed and padded into the common area. Eris stood in front of the panel, fingers hovering just above the interface, not touching it, yet the symbols flowed beneath her hands like water responding to gravity. The panel's cracked casing had sealed itself, microscopic repair filaments knitting together as if embarrassed by its former state. Marcus blinked. He blinked again. Then he cleared his throat very loudly. The panel went dead. The lights returned to their usual moody flicker. Eris turned around slowly, her expression composed in the way someone looks when they have just been caught doing something technically impressive, but socially inconvenient. Morning, Marcus said. Either I'm still dreaming, or you just fixed a system that's been broken since before I was hired. Eris tilted her head. It was only partially broken. Everything on this station is partially broken, Marcus replied. That's the brand. I did not intend to interfere, she said. The frequency was irritating. Marcus rubbed his face. You healed it, like it was injured. She paused, just for a fraction of a second. It responded to correction. Uh-huh, he said. Do you often correct space stations before breakfast? I try not to, she said seriously. Marcus stared at her, then sighed. Okay. New house rule. Yes. No fixing ancient alien or human technology without warning me first. I like to emotionally prepare for miracles. She smiled genuinely this time. I will restrain myself. Despite his best efforts, Marcus could not unsee the pattern forming around her. Doors opened faster when she approached. Broken scanners recalibrated themselves after she passed. Even the station's central AI, an irritable bureaucratic relic named Hermes, stopped issuing error alerts in their sector altogether. Hermes had once fined Marcus for breathing too close to a restricted vent. Now it politely adjusted environmental settings when Eris entered a room. "That's normal," Marcus muttered to himself one evening, watching the temperature shift to her comfort level without a command. "Perfectly normal. Probably coincidence. The universe loves those." They ate dinner together most nights, Marcus rambling about work while Eris listened, occasionally asking questions that were far more precise than curiosity alone would require. She wanted to know how authority flowed on the station, who made decisions, and who enforced them. She listened carefully when Marcus joked about how power here was mostly an illusion created by people with better uniforms. "Those who rule rarely understand the systems they depend on," she said once. Marcus snorted. "You should run for office." She laughed, startled by the sound of it, as if it surprised her every time it escaped. "I would be very bad at it." "Everyone says that," Marcus replied. "It's usually a qualification." The broadcast began subtly. At first it was nothing more than increased traffic alerts and polite requests for cooperation. Then came the official tone, carefully calm, carefully hopeful. Marcus heard it while recalibrating a gravity stabilizer on Deck 12. "Attention all Helios Station residents," the voice announced. "Unidentified royal vessels have entered the sector on a diplomatic search mission. There is no cause for concern." Marcus groaned. Anytime someone says that, there absolutely is. When he returned home, he found Eris standing near the viewport, staring at the stars. Her long ears were rigid, her posture unusually still. "Hey," he said gently, "you look like someone just told you the rent doubled." "They are close," she said. He paused. "Who is?" She didn't answer right away. When she finally turned to face him, her expression was controlled, but something fragile flickered beneath it. "People who believe they have lost something." Marcus scratched his chin. "That's ominous." She looked at him. "Marcus, if someone were searching for you, not to harm you, but to claim you, would you want to be found?" The question settled heavily between them. "I guess that depends," he said slowly. "Do they want me because they miss me, or because I belong to them?" Her eyes softened. "You understand more than you think." That night the station trembled, not violently, but deliberately. Massive energy signatures registered across every sensor. Ships docked with the precision of absolute confidence, the kind that came from centuries of unquestioned authority. Marcus lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Eris move quietly in the other room. He wanted to ask her everything. He wanted to joke, to deflect, to pretend this was just another strange station event. Instead, he said nothing. Somewhere above Helios Station, banners of light unfurled across royal halls. Names were spoken aloud again after years of silence. Hope was recalculated into coordinates. In a small, cluttered set of quarters, a maintenance worker and a quiet alien woman pretended, for one more night, that the universe was not about to knock on their door. The knock did not come to Marcus's door. That in itself was unsettling. Helios Station had a very specific way of announcing important visitors. Flashing corridor lights, authoritative announcements, and security officers who looked like they had been grown in identical vats labeled disapproval. Instead, what Marcus woke up to was Hermes clearing its synthetic throat inside his quarters. "Good morning, Citizen Stone," the station AI said pleasantly. Too pleasantly. "Please be advised that all residents are encouraged to remain calm while external dignitaries conduct routine inquiries." Marcus squinted at the ceiling. "Hermes," he muttered, "when you say dignitaries, do you mean people with shiny uniforms and the emotional warmth of a vacuum?" "There is no cause for alarm," Hermes replied. Marcus sat up. That was not the question. He swung his legs off the bed and immediately noticed that the gravity was perfect. Not slightly off, not wobbling. Perfect. That had not happened once in the 5 years he'd lived there. In the common area, Eris stood already dressed, her posture composed, her expression unreadable. She looked calm in the way a storm looks calm when it has already decided where it will land. "They are speaking with Station Command," she said quietly. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "Of course they are. Probably asking if anyone's seen a mysterious alien woman with long ears and excellent taste in pond-flavored food." Her lips twitched. "Your humor is poorly timed." "Yeah," he said. "It's a survival reflex." They watched the station feeds together as sleek figures moved through the upper decks. The royal envoys were unmistakable, tall, armored in luminous alloys that shifted color with every step, symbols etched into their cloaks that Marcus didn't recognize, but instinctively distrusted. Their technology hummed with restrained power, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. "They're scanning," Marcus said. "Deck by deck." "Yes." "Are they going to scan here?" Eris hesitated. "Just long enough." "Eventually," Marcus exhaled. "Okay, new plan." We panicked quietly. Despite the tension pressing in from every direction, absurdities persisted. The neighbor's illegal wind instrument began playing, softly this time, as if even it sensed the moment required restraint. Hermes dimmed the lights without being asked, creating an atmosphere Marcus would later describe as dramatic but unnecessary. "Marcus," Eris said, turning to him, "if they ask you—" "I won't say anything," he replied immediately. She studied him. "You do not know what you would be refusing." He shrugged. "Probably money, maybe a promotion. Definitely paperwork. I hate paperwork." A faint, genuine laugh escaped her before she could stop it. It surprised them both. The laughter faded as the first scan wave rolled through their deck. Marcus felt it like a pressure behind the eyes, a soft hum that made his teeth ache. Consoles flickered. Old wiring protested. Eris closed her eyes. The hum shifted. Marcus stared as the scan washed over their quarters and slid, bent, redirected itself into a harmless echo that bounced down the corridor and dissipated near the waste recyclers. "Did you just—" Marcus began. "No," Eris said quickly. He raised an eyebrow. "Not intentionally." Moments later, Hermes spoke again. "Citizen Stone, your sector is clear. You may resume normal activity." Marcus snorted. Normal is doing a lot of work in that sentence. The scans continued elsewhere. Hours passed. Tension stretched thin enough to hum on its own. Marcus tried to distract himself by fixing a loose panel that did not need fixing. Eris sat quietly, hands folded, gaze distant. "They will not stop," she said finally. Marcus leaned against the wall. "So what happens when they find what they're looking for?" "They will celebrate," she said softly. "They will say a tragedy has been corrected. They will forget why it happened. And what about the person they find?" She met his eyes then, fully. "She will return to a life where every choice is already made." Silence settled between them. Marcus broke it the only way he knew how. "You know, I always thought royal life sounded exhausting." She smiled sadly. "It is." Another alert echoed through the station, this one closer. The envoys were moving down deck now, confidence intact, hope sharpening into certainty. Eris straightened. "If they come here, you must let me speak." Marcus shook his head. "No. If they come here, I'm offering them tea. People behave better when offered tea. That is not a known diplomatic protocol." "Trust me," he said. "I've survived 3 audits." Footsteps echoed outside their door. Heavy, measured, the kind that assumed the universe would step aside. Marcus's heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. "Eris," he said quietly, "whatever happens, just know. I never saw a princess." She looked at him, something raw and grateful flickering across her face. "That," she said, "is why this is difficult." The footsteps paused, then moved on. Marcus sagged against the wall. "Wow," he whispered. "I am either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid." Eris reached out and placed a hand on his arm. The touch was warm, grounding, human. "Both," she said gently. Above them, the royal ships recalculated. Below them, in the forgotten levels of Helios Station, a truth remained hidden, not by force, but by choice. For now. The problem with hiding from royalty was that royalty had very good patience and very bad manners. By the second day after the envoys reached the lower decks, Helios Station no longer pretended this was a routine visit. Corridors filled with polite threats disguised as announcements. Security drones hovered a little closer than necessary. Even the vending machines refused to dispense snacks without biometric confirmation, which Marcus considered a personal betrayal. "They're weaponizing hunger," he muttered, shaking a machine that had eaten his credits. "That's low even for nobles." Eris watched him with an expression that was almost fond. Almost. "They are narrowing their search," she said. "They believe I am frightened." "Well," Marcus replied, rubbing his stomach, "they're half right. I'm terrified, but mostly of this station food." Despite the jokes, something had changed. The air between them carried weight now, like gravity turned up just enough to be uncomfortable. Eris no longer pretended the broadcast didn't exist. Marcus no longer pretended he hadn't connected every impossible detail. It finally came apart over dinner. They were eating quietly, too quietly, when a hollow news segment flickered on the wall display. A regal insignia filled the room, ancient and precise. A calm, authoritative voice followed. "The missing heir, last seen cycles ago, vanished under circumstances that suggest coercion or manipulation. Her safe return remains our highest priority." Marcus froze mid-bite. "Okay," he said slowly. "Hypothetical question." Eris did not look at the screen. "If," he continued, "someone didn't want to return, would they still call it safe?" Eris set her utensil down with deliberate care. "Yes," he swallowed. "That feels dishonest." "It is tradition." Marcus leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "I knew it," he said. "The long ears. The technology thing. The way Hermes practically bows when you walk past." She closed her eyes. "Also," he added, "you correct my posture like my grandmother." That earned him a small, broken laugh. "I apologize." "No, don't," he said quickly. "That was the last piece." Silence stretched, heavy but not hostile. "I am Eris," she said at last. "That much was never a lie." Marcus nodded. "I figured." "I am also," she continued, voice steady but low, "the firstborn heir of the Aurelian Concord, the one they lost." He exhaled slowly. "Huh?" She opened her eyes, looked at him, waited. "That explains a lot," he said. "Still doesn't explain why you eat algae bars on purpose." Her lips curved. "Defiance takes many forms." He laughed, then stopped. "So, what now?" "They will not stop," she said. "If they confirm my presence, they will take me, with ceremony, with gratitude, with chains disguised as silk." Marcus drummed his fingers on the table. "You know," he said, "most people run from danger. You ran from comfort." "It was never comfortable," she replied. "Every word spoken for me, every path chosen ahead of me. I was adored, yes, but not known." He met her gaze. "I know you." The words surprised them both. Eris looked away first. "That is what frightens me." The next scan wave hit without warning, stronger this time, focused. Marcus felt it crawl along his spine, probing, comparing, judging. Consoles sparked, lights dimmed. Eris stood. "Nope," Marcus said immediately, standing too. "Whatever you're about to do, don't." "I can end this," she said. "I can reveal myself. Spare you consequences." "Consequences?" He laughed sharply. "Eris, my life is consequences. I live in a maintenance ring. I argue with machines. I once got fined for smiling during an inspection." The hum intensified. The door panel flickered, briefly displaying an unfamiliar sigil before going dark. "They are close," she whispered. Marcus took a breath, then another, then did something reckless. He grabbed his toolkit. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Buying time," he said, "or causing a minor diplomatic incident." He yanked open a wall panel and began rerouting power through obsolete conduits, the kind no one bothered to map anymore. Systems protested. Alarms tried to start and then gave up. "Marcus, trust me," he said. "I break things for a living." The scan faltered, split, reflected back on itself in a cascade of false positives that lit up half the lower decks. Hermes spoke, confused for the first time ever. "Error. Multiple priority matches detected." Marcus grinned. "You're welcome." Footsteps thundered past their door. Orders barked. The envoys were chasing ghosts now. Eris stared at him. "You are interfering with royal operations." "Yeah," he said. "I feel like that was already established." She stepped closer. Her hand brushed his arm, lingering. "You would risk everything for me?" He shrugged. "You'd do the same. Also, I'm terrible at long-term planning." For a moment, the princess and the maintenance worker stood together in a shaking station, hiding from an empire with nothing but faulty wiring and stubborn will. Eris spoke softly. "When this ends, I will have to choose." Marcus nodded. "Yeah, and so will you." He managed a smile. "I've made worse choices." The station shuddered again, but this time it wasn't fear that filled the room. It was resolve. By the time Helios Station realized something was very wrong, Marcus had already broken 3 rules, 2 conduits, and 1 unspoken agreement with himself about not becoming involved in galactic politics. The station lights dimmed and brightened in a pattern that definitely wasn't regulation. Gravity hiccuped, briefly making everyone on Deck 9 feel taller than they deserved to be. Hermes began issuing apologies at a rate that suggested genuine anxiety, which was unsettling coming from an intelligence that once locked Marcus in an airlock for filing a maintenance report late. "Citizen Stone," Hermes said gently, "your recent activities are creating a statistically significant diplomatic complication." Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead and tightened a coupling. "Add it to my performance review." Eris stood nearby, arms crossed, long ears angled backward in a way Marcus had learned meant stress, not anger. She was dressed more practically now, hair pulled back, posture alert. No one looking at her would mistake her for helpless. Marcus wondered, not for the first time, how an entire royal intelligence network had managed to lose her. "They will realize this is deliberate," she said. "Oh, they realized that about 20 minutes ago," Marcus replied. "I think we're past subtle." Royal security teams flooded the lower levels, their armor glowing with restrained power, weapons calibrated to stun, detain, and politely ruin lives. Marcus guided Eris through maintenance shafts that hadn't been used in years, crawling past ancient insulation and old warning signs written in languages no one remembered speaking. "You know," Marcus muttered as they climbed down a ladder that definitely predated modern safety standards, "most people meet royalty at balls or parades. I'm meeting them through exposed wiring." "You are doing very well," Eris said sincerely. "That makes one of us." They emerged into an abandoned control hub overlooking the station's outer hull. Through the viewport, royal ships hung in perfect formation, their surfaces gleaming, impossibly elegant. Marcus felt very small looking at them. "That's a lot of confidence," he said. "Do they ever travel casually, or is everything a statement?" Eris approached the glass. Her reflection stared back at her, layered over stars and steel. "They believe order is fragile," she said. "They believe I am part of that order." "And you don't?" She shook her head. "I believe people are." The comm panel crackled to life without being touched. A calm, authoritative voice filled the room, warm and practiced. "Princess Eris," it said, "we know you are here. Please allow us to escort you home." Marcus tensed. "They've got really good microphones." Eris stepped forward. "There is no home for me there." A pause, just long enough to register surprise. "You were born to lead," the voice said. "Your absence has destabilized treaties, weakened alliances." Marcus leaned toward the panel. "No pressure or anything." Eris ignored him, eyes steady. "Then perhaps those alliances deserve to weaken." The silence that followed was heavy. When the voice returned, it carried disappointment instead of authority. "You cannot hide forever." Eris smiled faintly. "I already did." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Pride, maybe, or fear, or both. The envoys advanced, doors sealed behind them. Hermes began reciting evacuation protocols that no one listened to. Marcus scanned the control hub desperately, fingers flying across consoles that had no business responding to him. "Okay," he said. "Good news and bad news." Eris glanced at him. "Which first?" "The bad news is we're cornered. And the good? I found a maintenance override That lets us detach this section of the station. She stared at him. Detach? Temporarily, he said. In theory. In theory, she repeated. The section lurched. Warning alarms screamed. Royal soldiers stumbled as the artificial gravity shifted sideways, then down, then politely gave up. The control hub slid along magnetic rails, separating from the station with a grinding protest that echoed through the hull. Marcus whooped. I always wanted to do that. They drifted free, a small, forgotten module spinning gently in space. The royal ships adjusted instantly, surrounding them with surgical precision. Eris sat heavily in one of the control chairs, exhaling. You have turned my disappearance into an incident. Yeah, Marcus said. I do that. The comm panel flickered again. Princess, the voice said carefully, this is becoming unsafe. Eris looked at Marcus. He looked back. For a moment, no titles existed between them. I will return, she said slowly. On my terms. Not today. You would abandon him? The voice asked. Marcus raised a finger. Hey, I am not abandoning anyone, Eris said. I am choosing. She reached out, touching Marcus's hand. The contact was steady, deliberate. The royal ships hesitated. That was when Marcus realized something important. They were afraid of her choice. The module's engines hummed, ancient but loyal. Marcus smiled despite everything. Ready to commit one last crime? Eris squeezed his hand. With pleasure. As the module accelerated, slipping through a gap in the formation no one had expected them to take, Marcus laughed. Loud, unrestrained, terrified. Somewhere behind them, empires recalculated. Ahead of them, the stars waited. Space, Marcus discovered, was quieter when you were officially a problem no one wanted to acknowledge. The detached module drifted beyond Helios Station's sensor veil, engines humming with the tired loyalty of machines that had survived long enough to stop asking questions. The royal ships did not pursue. They hovered at a respectful, frustrated distance, their formation immaculate, their silence heavy with calculations that did not include force. Marcus slumped in the pilot's chair, hands shaking now that adrenaline had finally decided to take the day off. So, he said, staring at a blinking warning light that had been blinking since before he was born, on a scale from 1 to catastrophic, how bad is this? Eris considered. Politically, yes. Catastrophic. Personally? She looked at him then, really looked at him and smiled. Liberating. He laughed, short and breathless. Good, because I don't think I can go back to arguing with vending machines after this. They coasted in silence for a while. Stars slid past the viewport, indifferent and endless. The module stabilized, systems settling into a fragile equilibrium. Marcus ran diagnostics out of habit, then stopped himself. You know, he said, I used to think my life was very small. Eris tilted her head. And now? Now I think it was just unfinished. She nodded. You were waiting to be seen. Careful, he said. That almost sounded wise. She smiled again, softer this time. Living among you has been educational. The comm panel activated without warning. Marcus tensed, fingers hovering over non-existent weapons. Instead of the royal envoy, Hermes appeared, slightly distorted, but unmistakably itself. Citizen Stone, the AI said, voice strained. Helios Station wishes to inform you that your employment has been terminated. Marcus winced. Yeah, that tracks. However, Hermes continued, your recent actions have exposed multiple systemic inefficiencies. Station Command has elected to reclassify your record under exceptional circumstances. Eris raised an eyebrow. Marcus blinked. Wait, am I not in trouble? You are, Hermes said, but in a complicated way. The panel flickered again, this time revealing a different face. Older, regal, lined with something that might once have been kindness. Eris, the figure said quietly. She stiffened, but did not retreat. We will withdraw, the elder continued, not because we have abandoned you, but because we cannot force you. Marcus exhaled slowly. The Concord will adapt, the voice said. It always does. When you are ready to speak again, we will listen. The feed cut. Silence returned, gentler now. Eris closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was relief there, and grief, and something like peace. "It is over," she said. Marcus nodded. "Feels weird." "Yes." They did not go back to Helios Station. Instead, they charted a course through unregistered space, toward a network of independent colonies Marcus barely knew existed. Places that valued skill over lineage, where broken systems were opportunities instead of embarrassments. Marcus found work easily. Turns out someone who could outthink a station AI and detach structural modules without dying was in demand. He stopped fixing things just to survive. He started fixing things because he wanted to build. Eris became something else entirely. Not a princess, not a fugitive. She taught, listened, helped resolve conflicts without imposing herself. When people asked who she said her name and nothing more. Sometimes at night they sat together beneath unfamiliar stars. Marcus told jokes that were still terrible. Eris laughed anyway. One evening, as their small ship drifted near a quiet moon, Marcus looked at her and realized something had changed. He was not waiting anymore. "You know," he said, "I used to think crowns were heavy." "They are," she replied. "But people are heavier," he said. "In a good way." She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers with his. "You chose well." "So did you," he said. The universe moved on, as it always did. Treaties rewritten, stations repaired, empires adjusting to the absence of one lost princess who had never truly been lost at all. Marcus Stone, former maintenance worker, stood at the viewport of a ship he helped design, beside a woman who once slept near a broken heat vent, and smiled. Not because the future was certain, but because, for the first time, it was his.